What if one of the biggest arguments in NASCAR this year had nothing to do with a crash, a penalty, or a photo finish? What if it began with a single radio caller bringing up Richard Petty and somehow ended with Stephen A. Smith arguing with Michael Jordan on the phone and still refusing to back down? That is exactly what happened, and the reason this debate exploded is simple. Once the emotion is stripped away, the facts are not really on Stephen A.'s side. This is not just about opinions, personalities, or sports media theatrics. It is about what defines an athlete, who gets to decide that, and why NASCAR still has to fight for respect in conversations where the evidence should already speak for itself. The entire thing started on SiriusXM when a caller suggested that Richard Petty belongs on the Mount Rushmore of all-time great athletes. And honestly, that is not some wild, unserious take. Richard Petty is not just a famous name in stock car racing. He is one of the most accomplished competitors in the history of American sports. 200 wins, 7 championships, a legacy that stretches across generations. Whether someone personally puts him on a Mount Rushmore list or not, the argument itself is completely reasonable. But Stephen A. Smith did not treat it like a serious sports debate. He dismissed it almost instantly. His basic argument was that getting behind the wheel of a race car is simply not the same as what people normally consider true athletic competition. He grouped race car drivers together with golfers and leaned into the idea that this kind of performance does not demand the level of athleticism associated with sports like football, basketball, or boxing. And then he delivered the line that lit the whole thing on fire. Grandmas and grandpas can do it. That sentence changed everything, because now it was no longer just a debate about rankings or personal definitions. It became a direct shot at an entire sport and at the physical legitimacy of the people who compete in it. And when you say something like that about NASCAR, especially in front of a national audience, the backlash is going to come fast. The important thing here is that Stephen A. Smith is not some random hot take artist with no reputation. He has spent decades building his image as one of the most recognizable and forceful personalities in sports media. He knows exactly how to command attention, exactly how to frame a controversial opinion, and exactly how to keep himself at the center of the conversation. So when he made those comments, people in NASCAR did not treat them like throwaway noise. They treated them like a real statement from one of the loudest voices in sports, and that is why the reaction mattered. If an ordinary critic says NASCAR drivers are not athletes, fans will argue for a few hours and move on. But when someone with Stephen A.'s platform says it, the comment reaches people far outside the racing world. It shapes how casual sports audiences think. It reinforces old stereotypes. It reopens a debate that NASCAR has been forced to answer for years, even though the science, the performance demands, and the modern training standards have already made the answer obvious. Kevin Harvick was one of the first major names to fire back, and he did not waste time softening the message. He basically said that if you do not understand racing, you should keep your opinion to yourself. Coming from Harvick, that hit hard, because this is not a man speaking from theory. He is a champion. He is a veteran. He knows exactly what it takes to survive and succeed in that environment, and he was not interested in pretending this was just some innocent misunderstanding. Joey Logano came at it from a slightly different angle. Instead of only focusing on the insult, he pointed to the pattern behind it. His view was that comments like these are often made because they generate attention. He suggested that people who are not connected to racing do not really understand the physical and mental demands inside the car. And because of that, they reduce the whole thing to an image instead of a reality. From the outside, people see someone sitting down and turning a wheel. What they do not see is the violence of the steering feedback, the constant pressure, the split-second corrections, the body strain, and the mental overload that never lets up. Then Denny Hamlin stepped in, and that is when the debate became even more interesting. Hamlin did not just defend NASCAR emotionally. He broke down the actual experience. He talked about the cockpit heat, the G-forces, the endurance, and the level of concentration required to stay sharp for hundreds of miles. His point was clear. People love to talk about race car driving as if it is passive, but almost nobody making that argument could physically or mentally handle what a Cup Series driver does in real conditions. And Hamlin's involvement mattered for another reason too. He's not just a driver, he's also a co-owner of 23XC Racing alongside Michael Jordan. That connection would soon turn this story from a heated sports media moment into something much bigger. Instead of backing off, Stephen A. Smith leaned into the controversy. Joey Logano's comments clearly got under his skin, and when he responded, he made it very personal. He pushed back against the idea that he was chasing relevance and argued that his career speaks for itself. In his mind, he is not someone who throws out dramatic opinions because he has to. He sees himself as someone willing to say what others are afraid to say. And to be fair, there is a certain logic to that. Stephen A. has built his brand on confrontation, conviction, and refusing to bend just because a crowd turns against him. In the world of sports debate, that formula has worked for him for a very long time. But this is where the problem begins. That formula works best when the subject is mostly subjective. If you are arguing about the greatest player of all time, the most overrated team, or who deserves more blame in a playoff loss, then sure, your opinion can survive on force of personality. But whether NASCAR drivers qualify as athletes is not really that kind of question. The moment you move away from personal bias and look at the actual physical demands of the job, it stops being a preference-based debate and starts becoming a factual one. You can dislike the sport. You can prefer other sports. You can say racing is different from traditional stick-and-ball competition. But once you argue that the people doing it are not athletes, you are making a claim that can be tested against measurable reality. And this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. Michael Jordan, yes, that Michael Jordan, personally reached out to Stephen A. Smith to correct him on the NASCAR take. Stephen A. later admitted that Jordan wanted to set him straight and that the two of them argued about it. Just think about that for a moment. One of the greatest athletes in the history of sports, a man whose entire identity is tied to elite competition, saw those comments and felt strongly enough to pick up the phone. That detail changes the emotional weight of the whole story. Michael Jordan is not casually attached to NASCAR. He is invested in it. He helped launch 23XA Racing with Denny Hamlin, and this is not some celebrity side project where his name is just used for marketing. He takes the competition seriously. He cares about the team, the drivers, and the results. When Tyler Reddick delivered major success for the organization, Jordan reacted with real pride, not detached corporate interest. So when he defends NASCAR drivers, he is not doing it from ignorance, and he is definitely not doing it as a publicity stunt. What makes this so fascinating is that Stephen A. still did not move. Even after Michael Jordan, arguably the most iconic athlete of the modern era, made the case directly, he stayed planted in the same position. At that point, the debate became less about NASCAR and more about Stephen A. himself. Because once you keep the same take after Harvick, Logano, Hamlin, and Jordan have all pushed back, it starts to feel like this is no longer about evidence. It becomes about identity. It becomes about not giving ground. And that brings us to the most important part of this entire argument, the facts. If the debate is about whether NASCAR drivers are athletes, then the first place to look is not a TV studio or a radio segment. It is the physical data. Inside a NASCAR Cup car, drivers are exposed to extreme cockpit temperatures that can climb well above what most people could comfortably tolerate for long periods. They stay in that environment for hours, not minutes. Their heart rates remain elevated for the duration of a race, often reaching levels associated with high-end endurance performance. That is not a casual stress response. That is sustained cardiovascular demand. Then there are the G-forces. Every corner, every braking zone, every sudden move in traffic places strain on the neck, shoulders, core, and arms. It is not just about surviving a single moment of force. It is about repeating those moments again and again while maintaining total control. Add in steering resistance, vibration, dehydration, reaction time, and the need to make precise decisions at nearly 200 miles per hour, and the image of race car driving as just sitting there falls apart immediately. Kevin Harvick did not simply defend the sport with emotion, he pointed to biometric evidence from inside the car. Denny Hamlin emphasized the conditioning needed to handle the environment. NASCAR itself has consistently highlighted the endurance, focus, and physical preparation required at the highest level. And honestly, common sense should tell the rest of the story. If this were something that ordinary people in their 60s and 70s could casually do at elite level, then teams would not spend so much time training, analyzing, preparing, and selecting for performance. That is the flaw in Stephen A.'s argument. He treats the appearance of the sport as if it tells the full story. But high-level sports are almost never that simple from the outside. A boxing match looks like two men throwing punches until you understand conditioning, timing, footwork, and durability. Quarterbacking looks easy until you study reads, pocket movement, timing, and decision speed. Racing is the same. The more you actually understand it, the harder it becomes to deny the athleticism involved. So if the evidence is this strong, why does Stephen A. still hold the line? The answer may have less to do with NASCAR and more to do with the persona he has built over the last 30 years. His public identity is rooted in certainty. He is the guy who does not retreat. He is the guy who keeps talking even when the room turns on him. That image has made him powerful, profitable, and impossible to ignore. Because of that, changing course on this issue would not just be a small correction. It would feel like a crack in the armor. After defending the take publicly and forcefully, backing down would mean admitting that a whole chain of people, from drivers to owners to one of the greatest athletes ever, had a stronger understanding of the subject than he did. And maybe that is the hardest thing for someone in his position to do. That is what makes this story more than just another sports argument. It is not simply NASCAR versus a media personality. It is the collision between measurable reality and a public persona that has been trained never to blink. In the end, this entire controversy started with Richard Petty, but it became something much bigger. A single caller brought up one of the greatest legends in racing history, and that led to a full-scale debate about whether NASCAR drivers deserve to be called athletes at all. From there, the reaction spread through some of the sport's biggest voices, crossed into Michael Jordan's world, and circled back to the same place it began, Stephen A. Smith standing firm, even while the evidence stacked against him. And maybe that is the real takeaway. This debate is not still alive because the facts are unclear. It is still alive because strong opinions are harder to move than data. But if the question is simple, are NASCAR drivers athletes? Then the answer is simple too. They compete in brutal conditions, train for specialized physical demands, operate under constant mental pressure, and perform at speeds where tiny mistakes can have massive consequences. That is not pretend athleticism. That is elite athletic performance in one of the most misunderstood forms in sports.